Okay, so maybe my experience wasn't quite that action-packed, but I was really young at the time, so it kind of felt like that. My school sometimes had optional trips during the holidays, like going to Paris or to Pompeii. And one year, the school held a trip to go skiing in Switzerland. Obviously, that sounded super fun, and I was fortunate enough that my parents let me go. A lot of my close friends went, and we had a great time. I didn't really have much experience skiing, so I spent about half of the trip stuck in snow because I was just dreadful. We stayed in a hostel, which honestly wasn't all that bad. It had a football table and a rather shoddy TV with an old game console which only had Tekken. None of us knew how to play, so we would just spam all of the buttons. Anyways, due to the number of students that went, we all got split into groups, and sadly, I was separated from a lot of my friends. But there was one guy, let's just call him Dave, who I was on amicable terms with, and during this trip, we ended up becoming pretty close. Mostly due to the shared trauma that I will be talking about in this video. After a fun week and a half of me being terrible at skiing and getting yelled at by my instructor for being so bad, it was nearly time for us to go home. On our last day of skiing, our group's instructor wanted to take us on a more difficult route that was higher up on the mountain. The coach knew how bad I was at skiing and still let me go for some reason. That had to have been some kind of assassination attempt on me or something. Naturally, to get to the slope we had to take the ski lifts up the mountain, something we were all very used to by this point. The ski lifts could only hold 2 people, so we would have to get into pairs before we got on. As expected, I went with Dave like I had been doing the whole trip. The chairs were pretty standard and were designed like this. As with a lot of ski lift chairs, there is a metal barrier in front of you which connects to this little metal footrest. Now then, this ski lift journey was taking a lot longer than usual since the slope was fairly close to the top. Dave and I chatted to kill some time, and we ended up debating about how the barrier on the ski lift even worked. Dave thought that the rail was locked in place in the same way that roller coaster restraints do. Roller coaster restraints stay locked in place during the ride and only unlock at the end. For very obvious reasons. I was like, no, the bar is clearly only staying down because of our feet holding it there. After some back and forth, being the idiotic 9-year-olds that we were, we made the very stupid decision to test it out. We took our feet off and lightly nudged the footrest up. I was only planning to let it rise a bit before pulling it back down, but for some reason, the railing flew up super quickly before we could do anything. Normally, I would have taken the opportunity to gloat about being right, but at this point, we were only halfway through the journey and incredibly high off of the ground. If we fell from this height, we would be lucky to only break our legs. I was a horrendously unathletic and fragile child, so I think if I fell, my body would probably have just shattered. Dave and I pressed ourselves to the back of our seats and held on for dear life. We were absolutely terrified, and we just looked at each other with an uh-oh kind of expression. I think we were too paralysed with fear to say anything, so we just sat in silence the whole time, trying not to look down. I don't recall how long we stayed like that. Realistically, it probably wasn't even 5 minutes, but for us, it felt like hours. When we finally got to the end, I remember that there would be a guy who would lift up the railing and help people get out of their chairs. He was probably pretty confused when 2 9-year-olds arrived with absolutely nothing keeping us in. We were able to laugh about it afterwards, and it's something I look back at rather fondly. We learned a valuable lesson that day, and I would like to think I'm not dumb enough to do that ever again. By the way, I did a little poking around for this video and discovered that some resorts have older ski lifts which don't even have safety bars. I guess the previous generation was just built different because you definitely could not have convinced 9-year-old me to get on one of those death traps. Thank you for watching, and if you want to see me talk about more stupid stories, please consider subscribing. Goodbye.